Hi everyone, this is James from the Control Listen podcast brought to you by Octopart. Today we have a special guest for you. This is Loreta Tarozaite, founder and CEO of Loreta Today and the head of global corporate communications and marketing at Phison Electronics. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, James, for having me.
Anytime. Just to get started, because you are across a lot of different areas, can you maybe tell us a little bit about Loreta Today, and maybe just explain the company, what it does, and what its backstory is?
Okay, sure. So I moved to the United States in 2003, and I came from a very busy life as a TV news anchor and a TV news journalist. So I had to reinvent myself when I moved to the United States and figure out how those skills can be applied here. And it took me a while to figure it out. But in the end, I realized that at the core of what I do is communication and sharing the information. So I started creating video stories for businesses with one goal in mind: humanizing those companies. Because way back when, in 2009, is I think what I started tapping into that scene. I realized that a lot of company leaders and company employees are hidden behind those corporate walls. So moving from Lithuania as my home country to a completely different environment, I was not used to a lot of automated messages on the phones, a lot of like button clicking before you get to the person. So I thought, how
Mhm.
can we show the people that are actually working in those corporations? So I shifted my communication slash TV journalism skills into telling business stories through video. So that was the start of my career here. And then through however many years now, 22 years something, I've been living here in the United States, that the what I do right now has built upon that storytelling.
Okay.
So communication being at the core. But when I started working in different organizations, Western Digital, SanDisk, and working with startups that are technology related startups who really struggle in communicating their story, I realized that a lot of times the technology is how people lead instead of humanness. So I took it again upon myself to figure out how to tell those human stories better and
Mhm.
how to communicate inside the organizations better. So I've observed a lot of dysfunction, a lot of broken ways of how larger organizations were functioning, as well as how companies in the growth stage were scaling fast, but a lot of processes, a lot of communication became broken because of that scale and speed of scale.
Right.
So over the years, I sort of observed all these problems and realized, okay, what am I good at besides storytelling, besides understanding marketing? I'm also very good at operational part of the business, because without preparation for the production, video production, without preparation for understanding the news and information flow, for, let's say, national news television, you can't really tell a story clearly. So
Mhm.
all that preparation works, all that operational aspect of it just was part of my DNA, and I just combined all of that together, and now I call myself the chief of staff with a CMO flavor. So
Okay.
I understand the operational aspect of business, but I also understand the presence. So I solve three
Yes.
problems for companies: people, process, and presence. And that's how all of this came together for me in this stage of my life.
Fascinating. You raised a good point there about the story, about the human aspect of it, because I think especially in the tech space, if you have a fantastic product, it's really easy sometimes just to lean on that and not actually focus on other aspects of the business and of the environment. So yeah, it's really
Yeah.
interesting that you work in that space.
Indeed, and after living in Silicon Valley for about 17 years, I really got the bug for tech. When you
Mhm.
live overseas and you hear Silicon Valley can't really grasp with your mind what that means. Only
Yes.
after moving here and only after starting, surrounding myself with opportunities to network in tech space, to meet the founders, to even work in tech, as a video producer, I started realizing how difficult sometimes engineering minds operate in terms of communication. It's
Hmm.
difficult for them
Yeah.
to express, what they're trying to achieve.
Definitely. Before we get into Loretta's offerings and the whole aspect, I just want to ask a little bit about your role working with Phison. And let's tell us a little bit about what you do there.
Yeah, so I lead the corporate marketing and communications function there. When I first joined Phison in 2020, it was still COVID year. The company was in that space of growth. Where it's a very deep engineering company, semiconductor industry, and it's still in data storage. It just happened so that a lot of my career in corporate ended up being in data storage industry. So I understood the market in general, but Phison was very uniquely positioned in how their business model is structured. So they never saw themselves as a brand. So to me,
Mhm.
it was fascinating because any company that's built and that's reached, let's say, 20 years plus of existence is a brand in my
Right.
mind, right?
Mhm.
Is how you communicate that brand outwards is what had to change. So they still are on the very sort of growth stage, so to say, but they never quite invested into marketing, into storytelling. Everything was on a very tech level. So I came in and I kind of saw the operations inside. It's a global organization, and I
Mhm.
quickly realized that there were a lot of things that could be improved. The company was at that time 20 years old. Now it's hitting 25 years. So I saw the lack of presence online. I saw lack of leadership presence as well. I
Yeah.
saw lack of processes inside the organization that were affecting how people work together across the two regions. And I saw the opportunity to fix all of that and implement some structure around it. So what I ended up doing it is I actually ended up building out the corporate marketing communication function and sort of educating both sides of the world what that function is supposed to achieve. So I introduced, PR and thought leadership programs. We started being more consistent on social platforms of where our audiences are hanging out,
Mhm.
and growing that consistently over time without any ad dollars. Because again, it's an engineering company, so they don't quite understand or prioritize investments into ads. So
Right.
everything had to be very organic, very slow, but by being consistent, that's how we move the needle forward. And
Right.
every year, I was able to expand the scope and set higher standards to my team. At that time it was all external team. Over time I started bringing people in house, because as the company grows you have to start thinking, okay, where does communication break again, right? Because you
Right.
have external partners who are supporting you at certain stages of the organization, but then it becomes too cumbersome to relay all the stories that are happening inside, relay all the business goals that are happening inside to the external partners. So I started bringing people in house to drive certain initiatives and growing that team. So from about one woman show corporate marketing, I grew the team to in-house along with external partners. Still, I still consider them as team members, to about probably 20, I would say. I
Wow.
didn't do the math, but that was a steady growth over the course of 5 years. So building out that structure was really one of the biggest challenges, because the company, again, is deep core engineering, and they were just not used to seeing themselves as a brand.
Right.
So we just had to show them what that is.
I love that. No, that's fantastic. So jump back quickly. Do you want to tell us a little bit about today and the primary offered services that are involved with that?
Yeah, so I have my own process in how I view the companies when I start working with them, and there are four pillars that make up my process. First and foremost, whenever somebody engages with me, and for example, somebody comes and says, "Hey, Loretta, so you're in marketing, so do you do social media?" No, I don't. So do you create logos? No, I don't.
Mhm.
So I have to first and foremost educate what it is that I do, because it's very complex. I
Right.
see the marketing and communications as a bird's eye view, right? What it
Mhm.
is that a company first needs, what are the business goals? I go and investigate that. I go and see the landscape, in the digital landscape. I try to understand what's going on internally. So I dive deep, really, with leadership team, with teams and cross-functional teams. I assess the external presence before I present any solutions. So any of these social media logos and all of that stuff comes as part of that, and understanding of the business and understanding of where the company is right now,
Mhm.
and why it is that they called me to work with them, right? So
Right.
usually companies think they want to fix one thing, and then they start opening and peeling the layers and showing them that there's a lot more things broken that they should be first fixing before they actually go and try to achieve that marketing goal that they think they need to achieve. So it's a four-step process that I normally go through.
Hmm.
And the deep dive is where I uncover all the problems. Then in step two, we align with a business leadership. Okay, not business, but company leadership, where it is that the business priorities are, and what do we need to fix first? Because you can't just go and start fixing everything because it's going to be impossible. It's change management. You have to change people's minds. You have to change how people operate. You have to even change leadership's mind how to view things when it comes to marketing and communication. So we design then the plan on what we will aim to fix that aligns with immediate business goals, and then I work with teams to set the goals, the parameters, the metrics, train them how to sort of be self-efficient in managing their own accountability, their own processes, and cross-functional collaboration. So in the phase three is where we implement the tools, we build out the team if the team does not exist. We look at solutions, we look at workflows that need to be first fixed before we add new people or implement the workflows within existing teams. So it's all kind of like moving into that direction of organizing, building structure, making sure we have the right people doing the right jobs. Because a lot of times when companies are scaling, especially, you know, or moving fast into the growth, they just the people are tagging along because everything just keeps piling up on them to do 10 roles instead of one that they were hired to do. They now have to do 10 things, right? So it
Right.
becomes employees become overburned, and then they get frustrated because they're doing so much with a limited
Right.
amount of time. So we
Hmm.
have to fix all of that. We can't have a graphics designer drive communications program, or vice versa, communications program person become a graphic designer or a web developer. We have to
Right.
have the right people with the right skills and the right roles before we add complexity to it. So, and then I'm all about data analytics and measuring our success. So I make sure that the teams know what exactly they're trying to achieve. I help them set the goals, and I help the leadership team also hire the right people, right? Because sometimes, executives don't quite understand what marketing and communications function is, nor
Yeah.
should they understand. So that's why they bring me on board to help them to figure it out.
Right.
And then in phase four is once we clean up the house, once we put some structure into the chaos, then it becomes longevity. How do we continue communicating? How do we train the leadership team to continue being present for their teams? How do we continue growing the presence externally? If there's any culture shifts, then I bring other partners who are experts in culture changes and in personality, in leadership sort of style, coaching, so that whatever we fixed can last longer, not just temporarily. So I'm not the type of person who's going to come and tell you you need to do this and I leave. I actually work alongside and help implement what I think is needed to be fixed.
That's fantastic. It's a very holistic approach, and I think that's very necessary for something like this.
Yes, I can't look otherwise. Like I can't look otherwise. It's difficult for me to just see fragments. I have
Hmm.
to understand the big picture before I propose anything to improve.
I think that's a major issue in a lot of companies is that compartmentalization, those silos. It prevents people from actually seeing where the real problems lie because you don't get the whole picture.
Yeah, and even though I lead with marketing communications, that's my background, I see problems deeper in the organization. I may not necessarily have authority to fix, let's say, IT problems or HR problems, but I see how, let's say, lack of certain processes in those other departments or lack of expertise in those other departments actually affect the marketing communications. So I have to educate leaders of these other cross functional departments what they need to do to actually help the marketing department be more effective and efficient when it comes to elevating company presence externally. So everything in the organization is interconnected, and
Yes.
sometimes we do think that, oh, this is IT's problem. Well, this IT
Right.
problem is now affecting how my emails are not coming through, into my inbox because somebody sent through the contact form and they never arrived.
Right.
So, you know, and I guess one of the things that is differentiating me in general is because I have the background in TV journalism. And as a news anchor, you have to distill so much information coming your way to find what it is, where the story lies before you go on air and present that story.
Right.
So I see very quickly where things are broken just from the conversation, from how the information flows inside the organization.
That makes sense because you do come from a. I think a lot of people's backgrounds who come from different sectors into a specific sector, they bring certain skill sets with them, and I think sometimes people don't account for that when they hire. They might look at someone who specifically worked only in the area that they're hiring for, and not think about other skill sets that could be brought over from different sectors.
Yeah, and if you work in a corporation, actually, you have to show those other skills yourself. You have to really be
Yes,
your own champion, in
definitely.
showcasing what it is that you can also do.
Hmm.
And it depends on the organization. Sometimes managers don't really like you venturing out into other fields because they want you to just fix that one problem that you were hired for.
Yes,
But I think the world is changing, and we have to be our own champions inside the organizations and really showcase that we're more than just one this lane, right? Because we
yes,
all bring all these aspects of different experiences that can add value to the company long term.
definitely. So I saw something on your site that I found really interesting. You were talking about a topic, rapid scaling, and you mentioned that it can sometimes be more harmful than beneficial. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and what that means.
Yeah, when it comes to companies who are scaling fast, it's not a obviously I don't mean it from the business perspective that scaling is
Yes,
fast, but I mean that leaders forget, I guess, that people are the ones who are helping them scale fast, but then they forget to communicate the new vision, the new direction, the how are we scaling, what improvements are we going to be making, what sometimes employees get lost into what exactly it is that we're trying to achieve because it's never communicated down the chain. When the company is smaller, when it's like 5 people, 10 people, even 100 people, you can still kind of go by with this lack of communication. The moment it becomes 600 people, 1,000 people, you have to ensure as a leader that your team knows where the company is headed. So the danger here is, team scaling. These all these compartments and departments are hiring their own mini supporters, but none of them are really understanding the full picture of what it is that we're trying to achieve because
right.
everybody's being hired towards these little mini fixes.
Hmm.
And instead of, here's the big vision, here's where we're going, and here's how we all have to work together. So in that sense, when you lose that communication aspect, when you lose that touch to the people inside the organization, and to me humanness is always one of the biggest drivers. So you also lose the pace. You start losing the pace because everything becomes more fragmented and more disjointed because of those little pockets of silos that exist, and maybe only just department leaders know what's going on. But if they're
Right.
not good communicators, then their teams get confused.
Yes.
So getting everybody on the same page, putting the right systems of communication in place becomes very important. Executive communication programs, start becoming important. HR communication programs, because you have to then scale the reach, right? Same as with marketing. Once you're growing, once if you want the reach, you have to add, a dollars towards your marketing communication, towards, promotion, sponsored ads, or whatever the case is. So you have to
Mhm.
scale in that department, but it's as well as inside the organization. You have to scale how you reach your employees and continue inspiring them, to stick around.
Makes total sense to me. Uh, so back to the holistic view of things. Uh, what's the best way for companies to align sales and marketing teams, and
Hmm.
why is that so important?
Well, that's always the problem. Who is the right one, marketing or sales? Who's
Right.
driving what kind of story?
Yeah.
So the way I look at sales, sales always has the closest touch to the customer, always, right? Marketing, corporate market. So there's corporate marketing as an umbrella, and then we have product marketing teams. So product marketing teams are very closely should be, I guess, very closely aligned with sales, because whatever products are being developed, sales are going to sell. And sales also is an immediate sort of intaker of the feedback from the customers, right? So they come back and say, oh, okay, this feature didn't work, or we're struggling with customer experience, or whatever the case is, right? Or we don't have enough parts to sell to them. So product marketing, what it is that we're doing, right? So in order to achieve those business goals in revenue sales, the two have to go hand in hand, because one cannot sell something that does not exist yet, and they have to know the timelines, the deadlines of when the actual product is going to go to shipping, so that the sales can promise something to the customer. So that alignment is very important. Then obviously you have to start thinking, okay, how do we reach new customers? What kind of funnels do we design? How do we organize our database of in which stage of the funnel these customers are in? How do we capture more? How do we create content that's relevant for all these stages of the funnels? So in my view, there has to be a lot of communication between those two cross-functional teams, marketing and communication, or sorry, marketing and sales. But sometimes it just doesn't happen. Unfortunately, it
Yeah.
just doesn't happen
Yeah.
because the mindsets are different between those two groups, right? So sales teams, business development teams, they're like, okay, we have to just sell to generate the revenue. Marketing teams are like, who are we selling to? Tell us the problems, because we need to create content, we need to create funnels, we need to support your activities to actually garner that attention. So I don't know right now in the current landscape how the two are improving their communication between each other. I just know from my experience, immediate experience, that there's still a little bit of the gap, and there's a lot of communication, and I'm using a lot of word communication, I have to say. I have to I have to swap it with something. I just caught myself. So we have to streamline the information flow, between the two groups, and maybe have, marketing teams sit in the customer meeting so that they hear firsthand what's going on. All right. And
Hmm.
vice versa, have sales teams understand how we can better support them. So having those common goals, understanding the customer journey, aligning on these key pillars is crucial between those two groups. So that would
Right.
be the primary thing I would look at. What is sales doing and what is marketing doing? How the two intersect.
Sure. I'd like
Yeah.
to bring things back a little bit to what you talked about your time in Silicon Valley.
Hmm.
I know that you worked with a lot of tech startups. So what would you say are some of the key steps that a tech startup could take early on in their journey to ensure success later?
Yes. So very early stage startups never think about the branding, or the limitation about the brand is, or understanding of the brand is limited to, I need to have a logo and I need to have a website. A lot of times the founders in the tech industry are obviously very technical, so they do not prioritize their personal brand either, right? It's only when, let's say, they have to go and start fundraising, they realize, oh, maybe I need to have some PR, or maybe I need to post something on LinkedIn, because at that point, if you're going fundraising, you have to have some type of presence, some type
Yes.
of external authority available for investors to check you out on. So I would say one of the first things that, not of the first, but some of the things they should be doing is really being present online, and hiring maybe a PR manager to help, with some uh, article pitches, or interview pitches, something where, they start building their authority right at the beginning, versus waiting until the company is ready to go fundraising. Because again, in order to receive the funds, the investors have to trust you, so they do
Right.
searches on you, they look at what you've been talking about externally, and if you're quiet and if your LinkedIn doesn't even have the picture, that doesn't build trust,
Yeah.
or if it has a
Hmm.
dog picture or a cat picture. Well, thank God those are reduced in the end, but you have to be a little bit more present, and
Yes.
think about yourself as a leader in the industry versus I'm just building a product, because there's a
Right.
reason why you started building a product, right? So you could be sharing a lot of perspective, a lot of ideas, and maybe driving even conversations, right, of based on your ideas and your solutions externally. So it's something that you have to think beyond the logo and beyond just the website.
Definitely. I wonder if this ties into as well, because I had a guest on recently and we had a conversation about accessibility as something that's a key thing people overlook. So if you go to
Mm.
a brand or company's website and you can't find basic information, you can't contact that company, that's going to be hugely detrimental to retaining or gaining new users.
Yes. And these days people really, even customers are first researching everything possible, looking at reviews, looking at all sorts of information before they call you. So you
Yes.
have to give them what they need right up front to close that gap, between the sales and the investigation. If you don't catch them in the right moment, you lose them. So on the website, even today, which is surprising to me, it's been what, I started my video producing business in 2010.
Hmm.
But even today, there's a lot of websites that still don't have videos on
Yeah.
them,
Hmm.
you know, um, still don't have founders introducing their stories, don't have that human aspect going. Yes, the picture is nice, the write up is great, but people want to see real people. And especially right now in the AI age, when a lot of things could be faked,
Yeah.
you want to have the real human connection to somebody that exists, not in an
Definitely.
avatar mode, but a real person, a real founder, a real team, introducing themselves, talking, expressing passionately what it is that they're building. Because people, I think, will start getting hungry for that human connection in our AI, based world right now.
I think so too. I definitely agree on that aspect. Uh,
Yeah.
so just to shift things slightly, back to technology, just keep going on that aspect.
Hmm.
How would you say a B2B technology company um, in a high growth sector would differ from other clients in the need for visibility and for brand authority?
Hmm. Uh, B2B is all about trust. And it's a much longer relationship building cycle in B2B than in B2C. In
Mm-hmm.
B2C, you can go viral and you already guarded, 30% of the market, for example, right? It's a slightly different emotional connection in a B2C market than in B2B. In B2B, you really have to exude authority, you have to be trustworthy because it's bigger stakes in the end, to do business with you, right? So it's
Right.
built on that trust level more so than B2C. And the customers in B2B are not looking for fluff. They're looking for
Right.
foundational things, right? How are you? How's your customer experience? What are salespeople telling in the meetings? Is it the same message as they just heard from the CEO, for example, in a earnings call, right?
Mm-hmm.
How is the story consistent? How do you show up uh, externally, right? Are your visuals consistent, or is everything looking kind of out of place? All of that indirectly affects the impression that potential customers receive or partners receive about you as a business. So it's
Mm-hmm.
slightly different than B2C. B2C, to me, I call it a jungle. you know, you don't know what's going to happen because there's so many billions of people in the world that you have to influence with a product, right?
Right.
And you have to really connect on a different emotional level in a
Yeah.
B2C environment than in a B2B environment.
Yeah. It definitely makes sense. It is a
Yeah.
much more emotional decision with B2C, I would say. I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you see in your world? How do you shape, the company's sort of connection, I guess, and trust building in your
I,
role?
I think a lot of it comes down to what the community says, because within the electronics sector, there are definite communities within that space.
Hmm.
And people definitely talk there. They express very honest opinions. So I think
Mm.
people look to those communities from a business perspective to say, what are people saying about your product?
Yeah.
Does the general community think that it's a good product? And I mean, features are obviously an important thing, but there's more to it than just that, as you've said.
Yeah.
It's what is the company like to work with? What are the features like? Is the pricing sort of effective? Because I mean, pricing is a big factor for a business side of things. You have to
Mhm.
obviously
Yeah.
work it into the budget. So there's a lot of different factors. I think there is a lot more, like you said, to consider than B2C.
Yeah. And how do you help grow the communities? Like, do you go into specific platforms where the business exists, or let's say, what are your priority communities? I'm curious.
Obviously, places like Reddit are important. Um, there's huge
Yeah.
communities existing in that space. But you also have other spaces like I think YouTube is an interesting one because a lot of people actually
Yeah.
go to YouTube to find professional business possibilities, opportunities, and
Yeah.
obviously,
I think. Go
oh
ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say LinkedIn as well. I think
Hmm.
LinkedIn's a huge one.
Yeah, I think for B2B, YouTube and LinkedIn are underutilized in my opinion because those are the platforms where really, um, especially LinkedIn, sort of the leadership team, you can really garner a lot of attention. YouTube, from my experience, it's difficult to get attention in a B2B business because there's not a lot of virality in a B2B business
Mhm.
necessarily. So the content is more educational, more kind of white
Yes,
papery, especially in the
exactly.
tech.
Yeah,
So it's not
it's
a
a
lot of
trust thing.
views. Yeah,
Yes,
exactly. It's just building trust, that, okay, here's our lead engineer talking about this recent feature that we just released, that might
yes,
affect, for example, how your data center is being cooled down or whatever the case
right,
is.
exactly.
So it's different, and sometimes, at least to me, it's difficult to sell the ROI aspect on YouTube. Why should we
Yes,
do more video content, right?
yes,
Because we just had only 50 views, but those could be very quality 50 views versus
yes.
quantity virality type of views, right?
I definitely agree. And like you said, it's that trust building. It's showing you have expert knowledge in the area that you operate within. So a white paper that you used was a great example, I think. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely found that sharing a really well-written white paper from someone within your organization
Mm.
can really have people say, wow, okay, that's really interesting that they're working in that space. They really know what they're talking about in this niche area, and they might reach out regarding something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. So we share similar pain points, I guess.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
So AI was something that you mentioned earlier on, so I'd
Hmm.
love to talk about that a little bit.
Okay, let's
And
talk.
yeah, let's talk. I did see that you mentioned in a recent talk that you did about how AI can be an amplifier for structure, and otherwise it could also be something that leads into chaos. So, what's
Hmm.
the differentiator there, and how do you direct things in the right direction in the AI space?
Yeah, I feel like everybody right now is on the AI craziness. It's like, oh, we can't be left behind. There's like fear of missing out. Sometimes I feel the same way. I'm like, oh my god, I think I should be improving a lot of things with my with existing AI tools, but I feel like I can't keep up with how many tools there are out there, and it's really difficult to distill. So a lot of companies are jumping in this bandwagon. Of course, in marketing communication function, you really can benefit a lot on AI. However, there's also a danger. You can't just start pushing content that's AI generated, assuming that you're adding value. Anything that you do with AI, it has to bring value, in my view, to the audience, right? So that's externally facing. Internally facing, whenever people or companies start putting in AI on top of broken processes or workflows, it just continues breaking. And then, you're like, well, we just added AI feature. Why is it not fixing this problem for me? Well,
Right.
because it was already a problem that needed to be fixed before
Yes.
you added AI. And a lot of company leaders, don't understand that because they hear AI is here. We have to do things with AI. Let's subscribe to something. Let's start implementing. And then they don't think that actually people, employees, have to adapt to how they operate. They have to learn the tool. They have to rework their workflows, and then it becomes extra time for them to do things because it's not part of the current process. So that's where the frustrations start kicking in. And when I talk to leaders and in my presentations, I say I come in and get your company AI ready. I help you fix out all these workflow problems, process problems, people problems, presence problems. Now we can start adding AI layer on top because there's more streamlined ways of operating instead of adding AI onto a broken system that will continue breaking. And that's the education that I think needs to happen
Yes.
because companies are just moving way too fast, and that there's a lot of frustration, and we expect humans, to just flip the switch and know what they're doing when AI tool is coming in.
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
I struggle with that myself, knowing I logically know we need some efficiencies approved by AI, but I know that I need the right people, actually implementers, who will drive and own that piece of the process or project or
Yes.
tool, because I'm not going to be the one learning every possible tool out there, to implement as well.
We're coming up on time, so I just want to ask one more topic.
Hmm.
Brand authority. It's something
Hmm.
I mean, it's a relatively recent term. I know it's been around for a while, but it wasn't officially named like that. How has it become so crucial in building trust and driving momentum? And when did that shift happen? Where did that come from?
I can't speak to when that shift happened, but authority sometimes is tied to trust, and as well, in my mind, to humanness, right?
Mm,
If you are not afraid to show up, that just builds more authority and more trust in your company. If
yes.
you're hiding behind the walls and you don't want to address difficult questions from either your customers or consumers or journalists, then that means there's lack of transparency in your organization.
Hmm.
So the authority is how you move the industry. How do you position yourself as a leader in the industry where people look up to your organization for a comment, uh, some sort of innovative way of approaching a problem, right? It's coming up with innovative solutions. So that authority building extends primarily through people. Is your leadership team presenting? Are they being invited to for interviews and publications or podcasts or video? Sorry, not video, but TV appearances. You as a leader, kind of by extension, are helping build that brand authority because you as a human show up,
Right.
and that just helps an organization at large to feel like it's more out there, like
Yes.
you're being mentioned more often in media, or you're being seen in different keynote presentations or industry events, and that
Yes.
just helps with that perception, authoritative perception, and which then equals, okay, I trust them, they've been around, I hear about them, there's some type of perceived trust building that happens, and in the end that hopefully translates to sales.
Right. I read a couple of interesting papers about this topic fairly recently, and what I found really
Mm-hmm.
interesting was how each generational group determines this. So,
Mm.
what I found really interesting was that Gen Z and Gen Alpha and millennials as well, they actually put a lot more value than older generations on a brand's public image, on
Mm.
what that brand champions cause wise,
Mm.
and on whether they find that brand trustworthy. They care less about, to an extent, about the product, to about the price. They're willing to pay more for something if they know that they can trust that brand and believe in that brand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different, how should I say, I think newer companies that are coming to market, they already have that type of mindset already, because
Yes. Yes.
they need to relate to the audiences or to the customers that think differently as well. So they need to resonate. So they already come with that, a little bit of a preconceived way of operating, versus
Hmm.
if you take a company that's 30 years old, that has that type of operations, that type of leadership that never changed. They will operate completely differently, and they will never resonate with the millennials and alphas and Gen Zers,
Right.
because they're
Right.
just not that style.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to break something that's old, ingrained in the culture, and make it completely new without really cleaning out the house,
Yes.
unfortunately.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. There's a whole school of thought in that aspect, so I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, it's definitely, how to say, when times change and the company does not adapt, they can just become extinct. So
Definitely, I
you
agree.
just have to adapt.
So wrapping things up, I just wanted to ask if people wanted to get in touch or contact you about working with you. What's the best place to do that?
I hang out on LinkedIn, so you can get in touch with me through LinkedIn or through my website, Loreta.today. It's going to be revamped with new content, and I still have the presence checklist on it that you can download and assess your company or your own leader presence. After the website is updated, later this fall, I will take that document down, and I will introduce new things, to engage. So yes, through my website, Loreta.today, Loreta spelled with one T, or through my LinkedIn. If you mention this podcast, I will accept the invitation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been absolutely fascinating speaking with you.
Thank you, James. Likewise.
And for anyone listening, thank you for tuning in and come back next time. We'll have another guest.